Hello, in this video I'm going to quickly go over all of the settings for my Wirelight shader, so that's how to set it up, what each setting in the inspector does, and yeah, let's get into it. To start, this is a shader, so you can find it in the shader tab, so shader, ZEC, Wirelight, and for now we're just going to look at the standalone, but we'll go into the other options later. So once that is selected, you'll see that we have the Wirelights on a sphere here. I'm going to start with a few important things to note, probably the things that'll get the most questions about. So if I've directed you to this point in the video in support or whatever, then this is probably the issue you're running into. So to start, very important, the material must be set to a render queue of 2501 or greater if you want the material to show up in front of skyboxes. So this is just like a weird thing of how Unity handles transparent materials, but we can see that right now the render queue is 2000. And if I were to go into game view, like there's no sphere. If I set this to 2501, the sphere shows up, right? So this is mostly important for the like the Poomi versions later, which I'll get into in a bit. If it's set to from shader for the standalone version, it uses 3000, which is transparent, which makes sense for this. The second note is I highly recommend that you bake vertex colors using Poomi's Vertex Color Baker. So that's as easy as just going up here, clicking on the Poi tab, Vertex Color Baker, dragging in your object with the sphere, clicking Bake Vertex Positions. At that point, you can just turn on this Use Vertex Color Positions. And so I will briefly show you why that is good. I come in here and move my shoulder. So you can see that the noise, even though it flickers slightly, you can see that the noise stays with the arm. If I were to disable Use Vertex Color Positions and move the shoulder, you'll see that it swims through the noise, which is not great. It doesn't look great compared to when you have vertex colors baked. So that would be something that I would recommend doing. You don't have to if you don't want to, but I would recommend that. But yeah, for like actually using the shader, you have two options. So one is, as we showed before, using the standalone. So standalone, obviously, like you could just have it on a sphere, but that's not what you want to do it like with it realistically. Chances are you want it like on top of something else. So if you have a normal sphere, right, and then you make a material that has the standalone shader, if your object only has like one material, or you want to apply this to the last material in your material list, so let's say it was like a bunch of materials here, like 4, you only want to apply it to this one, then you can use the duplicate material trick. So you just add an extra material here and then drag in your transparent material, and that will put it on top. This doesn't work for cases where you have a mesh that has a bunch of materials and the last one isn't the one that you want to apply it to. There's no way to like select which one you want to double up on. It just always doubles up in the last material. So let's move on from the sphere completely onto the second way you can use the shader, which is using the Poomi integrations, the Poomi modules. So if you go to ZEC, Wirelight, Poomi, I've set up the Poomi tune, so Poomi free, with Wirelight module installed. And you can see that adds an extra tab to Poomi, which has the Wirelights. So this means you can have like a material that's already set up fully for Poomi and just add Wirelights on top really easily. I should note this is an extra pass, so if you like have it completely masked out, like there's a reason I don't have a way to like disable the Wirelights completely, because you shouldn't be using the Wirelights material. If you want to completely disable the Wirelights, you should material swap it in and out if you want to turn it on and off, because it's an extra pass. One note on that I should cover: if you have Poomi Pro, I provide all of the module shader files so that you can build these yourself and change around whatever you want. And these are part of Poomi's like module shader system. I also provide a unbuilt version of Poomi Pro with the module added. And so you could just click this generate shader and it would generate Poomi Pro with the module. Likewise, Poomi has a ton of modules or module shader assets that you can add the module to by just like clicking add and slotting in this module. But that's more of an advanced use. If you need help with that, feel free to reach out in the Discord. I might make a video at some point in the future that goes over how to use the module system with Poomi because it's pretty powerful and doesn't have a lot of information on it that I was able to find. I sort of learned most of this from picking around Poomi's built-in modules. But anyway, let's get on to the settings. The settings fall into a few major sections, which are general, triangle settings, dither settings, noise settings, audio link settings, advanced settings, rendering, and stencil. I will be covering everything except for rendering and stencil because rendering and stencil are general settings that there are plenty of good videos and resources on already. Stuff like Z-rate and like stencil reference value and stuff like that. These actually mirror the rendering settings that can be found in Poomi itself. So if you need more information on that, you can also go to the Poomi help docs to learn more about those settings. So to start, we have a mask texture. This works as you'd expect. You can put in a black and white mask, and it will make areas where the mask is white have the effect, and areas where it's dark not have the effect. So if I put in, for example, this, you can see that everywhere it's dark doesn't have the effect, everywhere it's light does have the effect. This is like a pixel mask, it isn't a vertex mask, so you will see that like it isn't like the triangles are still there, it's just masks out those pixels that aren't in here. So continuing on to the general settings. So to start, we have a color texture. This is just like a color map. You can put in like a rainbow texture, for example, to get rainbow. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Color fudge has to do with the distribution between these two colors. We'll actually get to that a bit later. I'll wrap back around. Color multiplier is just a fixed multiplier on the color. This can be useful for making it like bright or making it really dark without messing with the intensity values here. Color power is raises the color to a power that you set here. And I found that this helps like make more defined lines. So for example, if I put this at like 1, then you can see that it's a little bit bland, but if I increase it, you can see the lines get more defined. So here we have two identical sections, color 1 and color 2. And likewise, all these settings are mirrored. The basic idea here is that there's noise that scrolls over the avatar, and towards the center of that noise, we will see color 2, and towards the outer edges of that noise, we will see color 1. And that applies to all the settings in these. So you can see that towards the center of these like noises, you see it gets more pink, and towards the outside, it gets more blue. So you can, of course, change these colors to whatever you want and use like the hue shift to change them, etc. But then there's also these vertex rounding factor and cage extrude. So vertex rounding has to do with essentially the way that the vertices snap. So you can see that like these vertices aren't directly on my model. They're rounded in space such that they're like slightly offset. So if I turn this up, for example, like to like 1000, you can see it starts to hug the shape of my model a bunch more, right? Whereas if I turn it down, let's say like 10, you can see it hugs it a lot less, to the point where it like starts looking broken, right? I found that 50 is a good balance in many cases. And the idea here is the same as the colors, where towards the center it'll be this vertex rounding factor, and towards the outside it'll be this one. So you can see that if I turn up this, it gets this sort of like swimmy effect as it goes from lower to higher to lower. And likewise, if I go the other way around, it gets this like balloony effect. So I found that this looks pretty cool. If you set like 1 to 100 and 1 to 50, you can get some pretty cool effects. And this is sort of like a trial and error thing. Just mess with it until it looks like you want it. If you want it to look like very regimented, then set them both the same, right? So cage extrude, same idea. So if I set this to 30 and set the cage extrude to like 0.3 there, you can see that where it's pink, it like bulges out really far, and where it's blue, it doesn't. And that can be taken to like an extreme if I do it like this. But the cage extrude, this one is like the other bit. So basically you just like set these however you want it. I personally prefer this like 0.1 and 0.3 because it looks the best to me. It gives a little bit of extrusion where the center is of the color. So moving on, we have triangle settings. This is pretty straightforward. The triangles can be slightly rounded like they are now, or they can be very straight like this. Personally, I like the rounded look the most, but straight works as well. And then there are other settings, triangle attenuation. This determines how far the triangles sort of fade out, like bleed off. And you can see that you can get some different varied effects with this, especially square versus rounded. Personally, I like this set pretty low so that you get those nice like wire lights, right? It's in the name. And then you also have triangle power, which takes that gradient and applies a power to it. You can see as the power goes down, you get more of an infill on those triangles. And as it goes up, it gets more and more strict on the actual lights or the actual edges. So these are my preferred settings, 0.1 and 2, but you can play with it and set it up however you'd like. So dither settings has to do with the dither you can see in the center if you look carefully. These start at 1515. So if I just briefly make this not move so that we can see in more detail, if I turn up the line, you can see that the edges get more dithered. This might be hard to see on the video just because dithering is heavily dependent on like the screen resolution and stuff like that. So the video might butcher it a bit. And then, yeah, triangle dither factor dithers entire triangles. You'll notice that there's this dither fudge. This essentially creates so you start from 1 and go, or 0 and go to 1, right? But you can move that threshold around so that it starts or ends later. And this lets you like dither even triangles that are really faded, right? And wouldn't normally get dithering, for example. Moving on, we have the noise settings. So noise settings has a scale. You can see that if I make this like really big, the scale makes the noise really big. Now, because it's per triangle, you'll see that after a while, it just sort of looks like a mess. So normally I'd recommend keeping that rather low. Rot 1, 2, and 3 controls the speed of the rotations for the noise. Personally, like I put like 1 in each and it looks fine, or just 1 in the first one, it looks fine. You can play with that until it is what you you'll notice that these rotations don't really like move the noise. It just sort of causes it to fade in and out in certain locales. And so that can be nice if you don't want like flowing noise at all. Noise smooth step just applies a smooth step to the noise. You can see that it can get insane, so just be aware of that. And yeah, 0 and 2 works really well. I haven't found any reason personally to change off 0 and 2, but I give the option. So noise movement direction. This is an XYZ value and then also W, but you don't really have to worry about that. And this determines like the direction that the noise moves. So for example, if I like increase X, you can see it starts moving along the X axis. Now, one important thing to note is that when you're using vertex color positions, this will sort of depend on how you baked those vertex colors. So this is sort of like the magic of vertex colors. If I put 0.1 in Y, you'll notice that the noise moves down my chest, but along my arms, like outward. And this is because when I baked the vertex color positions, I took my arms and I moved them down to my sides. So essentially going in this direction is Y, right? And because my arms were at my side, these are like baked Y. It's a little bit confusing, but at the very end, I'll show how to do like advanced baking to get the effects that you want. And this actually moves the noise. You can see like Z moves the noise in the Z direction. Noise fudge is similar to dither fudge. Basically sets like a threshold value. So you can see if I increase it, the noise disappears. If I decrease it, it gets more aggressive. But yeah, I personally think like 0.2, 0.3 is perfectly fine for this. Okay, let's move on to audio link settings. For this, I'm going to take us into play mode so that we can see the audio link. And actually my avatar down in the corner has the audio link set up, and you can see I'm in a world with audio link because it's pulsing. Yeah, we can see the audio link start. So I'm actually going to set some movement. I want this to flow. So audio link extrude and audio link color fudge drive the values up here. And so they specifically drive the values in the center because the center values are just more interesting to drive. The outside ones, I couldn't get anything that looked particularly good. So you can see that if I turn up the audio link extrude, it extrudes based on the bass here. And I can change that to like low mids. Now it extrudes based on the low mids. Personally, I think like a really subtle like 0.1 looks super good with this. You'll see it jut out occasionally. And then we have the color fudge, which essentially moves this value. And so you can see that if I set this like 1, it'll go from 0 to 1. For that, now, important to note, I do have this. So it goes from 0 to 1, blue to pink, because I've set them up in this color section. Finally, we have the audio link colors. So if I use like the theme colors from audio link or the color chord colors, these are the same as the ones in Poomi. So you can match up all your colors. Or you can just use set colors, which is the colors you defined up here. Okay, so moving on, we have some advanced settings. I'm not going to get too much into these, but they are essentially a set of fudges, one like slider that's used to go above or below 1 and 0 for this, and one noise multiple thing, which just is how much the noise is multiplied by. It's sort of similar to the fudge, but it has a different use. So to start, the time refresh limit is just like an Fmod on the time. So you'll see if I put this, see how it like resets to the same state. This is just useful for me in testing because the editor, like the scene time, can get really big and run into like some floating point stuff that causes it to like not look like how it will look in game. But normally you just set this like 10,000, don't worry about it. The rounding fudge has to do with at what point the rounding starts, or like it moves from this rounding value to this rounding value. And so you can see if I turn this up, like we're stuck at 30. And if I turn it down, we're stuck at 50. And so setting this to 0 means that it will be the defaults that are set up. And I think the defaults look nice, but just in case you wanted a little bit more control, you have that here. Rounding power, same idea. It just is a power factor on on these. So the centers will be sort of smaller because it exponentially ramps. Extrude fudge and extrude power do the same thing, but for extrusion, again, like leaving these default, I've set them up so that they look good at defaults. But this is just for if you want advanced control over that, or you're trying to get a look that you aren't able to with this right now. These might help you. Triangle roundness breakout, like I said, this just lets you go over or under 1 and 0 for triangle roundness. So if I like pump this up, you can see that I can get like some unique effects. They don't all look great, which is why this is like a breakout setting in the advanced settings area. And then noise multiple is just like multiplies the noise value directly, rather than sort of setting a threshold like the fudge does. So yeah, that's all the advanced settings. And now we're going to quickly cover that advanced baking information that I talked about before. So when baking your model using the Vertex Color Baker, if you just bake it like in T-pose, then you'll see how the noise flows like down, right? You can see that it flows down my body and like through the arms as if it's going from the top to the bottom. You can see it clearest like on the side view. Just sort of flows down. But if you, before doing that, take your arms, right, and rotate them down like this, and then bake, it actually bakes the positions of the arms there. So now you see that the noise flows smoothly down the arms because it's like along that. So if I then reset the arms, you can see that it flows outward along the arms. And so this can create some really aesthetic effects like this. And I believe that is everything. If there's anything additional, I'll tack it on at the end here. But if that is everything, then thanks for watching. If you need any additional help or information, you can feel free to join my Discord. That's at discord.zek.dev. And I'm always available there. Just make a ticket, send your license key, and I'll give you some assistance. Yeah, have a nice day.